Hi, I'm Lara, and welcome back to the Bass Capital Radio podcast. Today, I'm visiting with Mr. Kraig McLane with the Putnam Blueway and Trails. Thank you so much for spending the time to come down here and interview with me. Tell me a little bit about what you've got going on, with many things going on, specifically the trails aspect of things. So I'm going to start with the conversation piece that everybody gets from me, which is, how did you end up in Putnam County?
Well, first, thank you for having me.
Oh, absolutely.
I moved to Palatka 34 years ago. Took a job at the St. Johns River Water Management District, and one of my civic things that I do is I help advocate for bicycle pedestrian facilities, primarily what I call rail to trails.
Rail to trails. So explain that to me.
So, rail to trails has grown over the years, but it's essentially a conversion of an abandoned railroad
Okay.
to an actually useful piece of property for cycling and hiking and various trail related activities.
That makes sense now. So where the location of a lot of our trails runs kind of where you would expect a railroad to go, and I cannot wait to get into that, because one of the big pros for me in Putnam County is having access to a trail like that. We have the river, we have a lot of state parks, and then just to add a component to that, where I live in East Palatka, and I can take my bike right out my front door and hop on a trail and go all the way to St. Augustine, and the trail continues to grow. So, water management, you took that job and worked on rails to trails. How did you end up finding that job at water management?
Well, it was essentially in the water resource professional type field. I was Citrus County at the time, and then I applied for a job with the water management district and took that. Now I do my trail work as a side, so it's not with the district, but very flexible in my schedule, doing things that I need to do. But now that we've finished the majority of the rails to trails type conversion projects, we're embarking on other projects that move the corridor out and about and connect to other systems. We're currently working on the St. Johns River to Sea Loop, which is primarily not a rail to trail, but it's connecting 260 miles worth of trails throughout Northeast Florida, from Titusville to St. Augustine to Palatka, back through Crescent City to the land, and then
Hmm.
back to Titusville. And then that connects
Wow,
to the Coast to Coast Trail, which will take riders over to St. Petersburg.
that's
And
incredible.
and
That's
right now there's
distance.
14 regional trail systems like that being built in Florida. And at some point in time, they'll all be connected.
Wow. So I took a bike ride one time from East Palatka to, I don't know, somewhere south of St. Augustine. I was through Hastings. I see bikers all the time out there. There's a couple of gentlemen that I run into at Dunkin' Donuts in East Palatka often, and they have like these lederhosen shirts on. It's fantastic, but they ride 20, 30, 40 miles, no big deal. Kudos to anybody whose legs work like that, because
Absolutely.
that's an endeavor for sure. How did that come about? Was that an interest that water management had, or something that someone mentioned and it kind of took off? Because I feel like it's really developed.
Well, prior to that, in like 1985, I worked for the Department of Natural Resources in Tallahassee, and I was in a job that I sat next to the Rails to Trails office.
Okay.
So I got an exposure to the work going on there. And then the first trail that was built in Florida, the St. Mark's to Tallahassee Trail, on an abandoned historic railroad line. So I
Mhm.
got a little bit of exposure. And then as I was taking different work throughout Florida, just helped out with different projects like the Withlacoochee State Trail. And then I moved to Palatka, got a phone call from a colleague that said, Kraig, you need to look out the window. There's an abandonment right outside your office that I need your help with. So there
So,
we go.
yeah, it just kind of came
Yeah,
along the way. Do you have any family in Palatka, or was it solely the job that brought you here?
it was primarily the job. I do have cousins in town, the John Eubanks clan.
Okay.
Our families both settled in the Greensboro area in North Florida Panhandle.
Hmm.
So we have that in common. But other than that, that's most of my family in Palatka.
Well, the coincidence of you having a job here, but also having cousins here
Yeah.
is pretty, it's remarkable.
I didn't really grow to appreciate that until a little bit later in my life, but
I think we all find appreciation for things sometimes later in
yeah.
life. I love that this has developed to really span Florida. That's very exciting because we have a great, I mean, Florida is very unique, especially where we're located, that we're not too far from the beach. We've got the river resources and all of the especially for Putnam County, the natural resources. So I think that being able to connect all of that and really explore all of Florida through your home county is amazing.
Well, even our main regional trail we're working on right now, the St. Johns River to Sea Loop, is a obvious connection to the river to the Atlantic Ocean.
Right.
That idea was actually developed by a Putnam County resident, Herb Hiller, who's
Oh,
now
awesome.
kind of retired and moved with family to the Atlanta area. But he's
That's
kind of one of our mentors.
I think it's amazing that they considered, community members' idea and really ran with it. No pun intended.
Yeah, right. No pun. And Herb is a great advocate.
hmm
So.
uh, Now you have the obviously utilized the trails in Putnam Blueway and trails. Tell me how that came to be.
Well, it was interesting. I guess about 12 years ago, as some of this work was proceeding, the trails were being developed. Some local folks came up with the idea, and they organized a little committee. And I heard it was going on, but I wasn't invited. And I said, "Well, I've got a lot going on. I don't need to be involved in everything." And then a few months later, after they got the group up and started, I found out why. Well, they had accidentally had my email address incorrectly, and a lady by the name of Karen McLane,
hmm
and her address being kmclane@yahoo.com, sent me a note and said, "Would you please ask them to get me off this list?" So,
that's a very another coincidence along the way.
right. So I continued to help the group as an advisor, and then about 3 years ago, I joined the board.
Wonderful. Do you have a personal interest that, like, in childhood that kind of aligned you with this, or is this something that through your work developed?
Primarily, partly personal in that I've always enjoyed cycling.
hmm
When I was in Tallahassee, I did a bit of road riding. I'm not a real big fan of riding on the highways, so
hmm
I would go down and ride some of the roads within the wildlife preserves.
hmm
They're a little safer. And then when the rail trails were coming along, I was like, those make a lot of sense.
For sure.
Separated, so really started getting behind them, working on them there. And when I'd travel around different parts of the state, and I'd see there's an opportunity, let's work on it.
Yeah, I like the idea of being close to civilization, but far enough away that you're safe. How do you know the history of how that group name came to be? How they selected that?
Well, the idea was not only did they want the paved trails, as we generally call them, to be part of the system, but they wanted it to be so that encompassing to all aspects of trails. So the Blueways is the canoeing and kayaking
Okay.
component, and equestrian kind of naturally just fits in with that. So we have those main components, and some of the things we've developed over the years with the trails effort. We've also grown and expanded the Bartram Trail,
hmm
which is what I call a kind of a special place trail, in that it's not an actual paved trail, but it's a series of connected links or locations that you can travel to by bicycle, by kayak, those types of things. And then the Bartram work has really exploded. So
hmm
Putnam County is leading Florida in connecting all of Bartram's travels and all of his trail systems into one system.
Oh,
So
that's awesome.
from Fernandina Beach
hmm
all the way through Palatka to Ocala to Volusia County. So that's really growing. And the frolic that I think we have like the fifth or sixth annual
hmm
event we just had, they educate thousands of second graders. And on Saturday, they get thousands of members of the public, and the parents come back with their second graders and learn about natural history and the culture of William Bartram's times and the visits that he had and the culture that was here when he did his touring.
Yeah, I think that that is truly something unique to our community. In fact, we're going to be sitting down with Mr. Sam Carr and learning all about Bartram. On the podcast, we'd like to talk a lot about history. I think that there's so much here that we have yet to. I think there are different resources with the Historical Society, obviously the Bartram Frolic, but being able to find a central repository for all of that and get it out to people in not only written form, but audio form, and then in conjunction with these events. So I'm very excited to see how the two conversations marry. When you worked on this, obviously they got your email right, they got you connected in here. What role did you play to them when you first got started?
Primarily an advisor. They all knew me. They knew that my primary focus was building the trails.
Okay.
And then some of that comes along naturally as the how do you maintain them. And then some of the aspects on marketing and those kind of things I didn't delve into immediately, but then in latter years, we developed a wayfinding plan. We struggled to implement some of that, but we do have a really nice logo and concepts of how to do that. That's one area where we really need to put more focus as a community on how to really market our trail system, where I think we're missing the mark on that.
I was in an interview, and I did not know this, but in mountain climbing, the ravines is a place that people will bring their children to practice the altitude change. And I think being able to highlight those kind of resources, such as the trails in this community, is definitely something that people come out of town to our community for. So being able to not only highlight for visitors, which is great for the economy, it's great for us as a community, but the locals who maybe don't know about that. I mean, I was born and raised in Putnam County and did not really have the scope of understanding how much there was to do, and how many not only historical but natural resources were out there. So I think marketing is definitely a necessary evil, if you will, and it continues to change. So that's something you guys are focused on, getting that out there. Wonderful. And if you're interested in the development, we'll be sure to leave a link so you guys can follow what the Putnam Blueway and Trails are doing. And that is, again, in conjunction with the water management. No, just them. Wonderful. Yeah. Is there something that you see the Blueway Trails really forging the way in, as far as bringing the community to the trails?
I think in large part, again, the wayfinding, marketing, how to connect people to the trails. Many folks right now are leading different kinds of events that are utilizing the trail. Flora Home has a series of events that they do. There's the life events and Etnaya gravel and social bike rides in January of each year. We're embarking on our 6th annual event there. The Bartram Frolic does a whole series of things, paddling and the education of the second graders, that type of stuff. So just continually to work in those areas and grow those. There's even an event coming up, a special run to raise funds for a service dog for an autistic boy. That'll be this coming Saturday. But just seeing the trails be able to provide that resource to the community for an event that can help someone, or help a women's center, or help the Flora Home community rebuild their downtown, or their downtown park system.
Yeah.
They've done a phenomenal job there.
Oh my gosh, yes. I had the opportunity to come out and do one of the events. You and I met through events in the community, and I was really astonished by how amazing that park was and how beautiful the area is down there. I had admittedly not spent a lot of time in Flora Home. I think I did not recognize how big Putnam County really is when it comes to that. So it's a great opportunity to connect there. And then how far does that trail, because didn't they just connect a piece of the trail around that time? Was it maybe 2 or 3 years ago?
Right. These section of trail from Palatka goes all the way, currently owned, to Lake Butler, which is about 46 miles. There's another 25-mile extension that's under acquisition to basically Lake City.
Okay.
Um, about 8 months ago, they extended the trail from Keystone Heights to Hampton, which
Okay.
is, I think, what you're thinking of. And that's been a
Yes.
nice extension. There's about a 4 mile gap between Hampton and the section in Lake Butler that's been finished.
Wonderful.
Really neat trestle crossing when they get to that bridge, so to speak. And then we do have a gap in Palatka, which is a critical missing part that we're steadily working on. DOT's got it ranked for development now, so we're excited to see that happen. It's not fast enough for me, but we'll keep at it. And then the balance of that rail trail system, which picks up the Henry Flagler legacy from the East Palatka to St. Augustine, is the Florida East Coast Railway section. That's primarily completed. And then, in East Palatka, continuing the River to Sea Loop southward through Crescent City. We're working hard to make sure the trail has a actual physical connection to the St. Johns River. So in that corridor assessment that's starting this year, DOT has agreed with us to make sure that they study that connection, which will make a lot of sense, connecting the trail users over to the Willaca, Georgetown area where the amenities are.
Right.
And kind of speaking of amenities, about 3 years ago, City of Palatka was designated as a Florida Trail Town. We applied for that. We have all the amenities, the services, and things associated with that. That's moved along well. Kind of been talking with Flore Home about doing that. Hastings is considering it. I recently met with Pomona Park and the town of Willaca. They're interested in that as well as being part of the River Sea to Loop development.
When you talk about amenities, what are those?
Amenities for a trail system are basically restaurants, lodging, camping, hotels, bike shops, things that the resources folks need while they're traveling. On the traveling end, the River to Sea Loop will be a 260-mile loop that connects to about a 200-mile trail over to Pinellas County. Touring cyclists need support. They need to restock. They need to repair cycles. They need to repair tents.
Not just coffee.
That kind of stuff. And so the touring cycle community will need those resources, and the Palatka has that. So that's a nice asset. And then one thing that I think we often overlook here is that Palatka is on the United States Southern Bike Route, which is called the Southern Tier.
Okay.
So it connects a route from San Diego, California to St. Augustine.
Wow.
So depending on which direction the touring cyclists are going in, more than likely they're going to stop in Palatka on the start or on the finish. So I think there's a great opportunity to market that better.
Oh my goodness,
and get those, because we get about 500 touring cyclists come through Palatka, but they come through in fairly small groups and individual. So they're not often identified as being a touring cyclist. But when you see a bike rider on the road that has the saddlebags or what's called panniers, they're typically either on the way to San Diego or about to finish their trip from San Diego.
I have seen that and had no idea. That's, I thought it was about to St. Augustine.
And they love visits. So if you see them on the side of the road or at Publix or the bike shop, just swing in and say hello, welcome them to town. They love that.
Oh, that's great.
I usually stop if I see them in a safe spot and give them my phone number, let them know that while they're in town, that if they need anything, just to give me a text and I'll dispatch some help.
I love that. I think that's a great point and a great opportunity. Hopefully we can share that. It would be a wonderful idea to, coordinate with our resources to provide them. That's why California to Florida still just kind of blows my mind. When I think about how like say I was a cyclist, a novice in it, the waypoints that you're talking about, is there a resource that they use that we can also utilize if we wanted to make this journey and connecting that?
There's a group, it's called Adventure Cycling, based out of Missoula, Montana.
Okay.
And they map and provide digital and hard copy maps of these. There's actually multiple routes in the United States to go from coast to coast. For the Southern Tiers, they call it. You can get a map series that you can put on the handlebars of your bicycle, basically, or you can get the digital versions.
Right.
And
Smart to have both, though.
right, right. And they provide a lot of support to that. Most people that do that route are members of a venture cycling, and they use the resources and all the tips and education that come with that.
And then being able to further expand that opportunity into all of Putnam County is just exciting, to say the least. One of the things you'd mentioned was a gap in Palaca. I have personally not, I mean, I've rode my bike through Palaca, obviously, taking these back roads. So where's that gap at?
That gap is essentially on State Road 100 area, from the Palaca Airport to US 17. The location approximately is where the old Italian Latin Grill used to be located.
Oh, yeah.
So it's about 2.5 mile gap. There have been some acquisition struggles there. DOT's been trying to pick up the corridor, and there's some pieces that were sold. So DOT is trying to put it back together or work up a build around plan. And that's the primarily gap. They've been struggling with it for about 15 years, is why I'm a little frustrated.
Understandably.
But want to get it done, because right now, for doing a lot of events and encouraging folks to come to Palaca for cycling type opportunities, it really limits us without having that safe connection. For example, a lot of the cycling events, the bike riders like to do what's called a century, which is a 100-mile bike ride. So right now on the paved trail, you'd have to do like multiple ups and backs on the same trail to get 100 miles in, as opposed to riding to St. Augustine and back, and having your century done. So a lot of the centuries are done on the road, which they're doable. The North Florida Bike Club does them, and they usually get 600-700 cyclists out for those. But it brings in a whole level of logistics and planning and
I mean,
expertise.
That's scary enough to be on the road in a car, nonetheless, on a bike. I think that it's important, if we could just take a moment to talk about safety with cyclists. What are some things that we can do to help ensure when people are here visiting that they have safe travels as we're on the road?
Well, essentially in Florida, it's law to give them 3-foot clearance as you're passing a cyclist. And, just like anything, be respectful. They own part of the road just like we do, so you give them the elbow room. Be polite and courteous like we should in our Southern hospitality. And, on the trails themselves, one of the most important thing that's often overlooked is cyclists will roll through the trail stops signs. And we've had a few hit at their own error.
Right.
But stop signs are there for a reason.
Right.
Whether you're on a car or trail, but when you're on the trail and there's a stop sign for the trail, then you need to stop and honor that stop sign and go when safely. That's been a noted issue for a number of years, and we put out little PSAs on it and that kind of thing. But
that was a question I had. Is there a place that we can educate ourselves? Let's say somebody watching this is thinking about getting into cycling, obviously inspired by our conversation, because there is a lot of resource here in Putnam. Where would they go to find education on this?
Probably the best spot at the moment would be the Putnam Blueways and Trails Facebook page. It's pretty easy to find. Then we also have a website that we can link you to. And then there's Florida Bicycle Association, North Florida Bike Club, a number of groups like that are good with education as well. Sometimes it's just a simple post on one of the pages like, I need help with this. And you'll get plenty of help.
That's awesome. So very much a community. How many, and you may not know this, but pop quiz, how many cyclists do you think you see come through the trail system over a year?
Good question. We did some of the numbers in the recent past, and they're probably upwards of the 10,000 range.
10,000?
That's just for the paved trails.
Wow.
And then, touring cyclists are different. And then one of the other technologies that we use are the heat maps that are developed by folks that use these fitness apps like their watches and their cell phones. So Strava, Garmin, all those providers, you can go to their websites, pretty easy to find, and you can download their heat maps.
Okay.
Or what I do is I look at them on the screen and I take a screen capture,
Mm-hmm.
and I use those for presentations to show the intensity of use of the trails,
Mm-hmm.
and based on the brightness of the coloring, you can see the level of use without actually going to crank numbers. I've found our trail system has intensity of use comparable to urban trails.
Mm.
And, I could easily document, for example, that the plaque at the Lake Butler State Trail is a lot less used than the Pinellas Trail, but we don't have the population on that trail that we have here in Palaca and Clay County,
Mm-hmm.
so that makes a huge difference. But then again, having that nice kind of peaceful trail that's not slam packed
Right.
is a blessing as well.
Oh, for
So
sure. A little slice of heaven over
Yep.
there, where you get a little bit more activity and community on the other side. Yeah, I think that's really interesting. Let's be sure to. I'm going to drop an image in here so we can take a look at that, and we'll. If you're interested in this kind of data, we'll leave a link to that as
Yeah.
well. If we look at the future of the trails, obviously there's a lot of work being done, and not just by the Putnam Blueway and Trails group, but you've really got a team behind you trying to build this. What do you think in 5 years this is going to look like, or what would you hope for it to be?
I think in 5 years we'll have the River to Sea Loop completed. That'll be a 260-mile addition that would connect to Titusville as well to St. Petersburg. And then we should have the Palaca Gap finished by then, which will be a huge blessing. And then at that point, we'll probably be starting on the connection of the Gainesville to Hawthorne trail extension that was recently finished to Interlochen.
Okay.
So we have that trail was finished last year. So we'll begin embarking on the design and construction from Interlochen to Palaca, which will give us a route. They call that section the Old Florida Trail because it goes through the general area of the Marjorie Kennan Rollins, Cross Creek
Okay.
area, Paynes Prairie, and then back up to the south end of Gainesville. So that'll be a neat system when that's finished.
You have the whole Florida map in your head.
Oh,
I
yeah.
could just envision, all the little trails
Oh,
and
yes.
routes floating around.
A bunch of crayons running around out there.
I'm definitely going to be one of those if I ever got out there and started cycling who would need the Garmin and the printed map and the Facebook group. So I'm directionally challenged, but I like that I can just ride that way and then turn around and come back.
Yep. And for some of for the listeners, one of the best resources is the Google Maps.
Mm-hmm.
Turn on your bicycle feature.
Yeah, I just found out about that when I was trying to figure out, if I'm going to be honest, how much further do I have left before I get to my truck. And I think it's really cool. A lot of the people that I encounter, again, living in East Palaca, going outdoors and, we walk the trail often. I have picked up trash along the trail, trying to keep the community beautiful. And I know that people have adopted parts of the trails to keep it clean, but I do see cyclists out there quite often, and being able to connect with these people and being able to get their experience. Everybody's always friendly, and they will stop and ask questions along the way. So I think it really is the ability to bring in tourism, to bring in education. It seems like there's a lot of historical points along the way too. Is that something, as far as history wise, I have not noticed on the trails necessarily any places to talk about where you're at? Is that something that they might, put in? And maybe I missed that part on the trail.
No. It's definitely something that needs to be developed.
Mm-hmm.
I had, in the earlier days, an idea of having an entirely interpreted system.
Mm-hmm.
So that, for example, if you're traveling over from St. Augustine, little map that talks about you're entering the St. Johns River Basin.
Okay.
And what the ecosystems are that you're traveling through, flatwoods, floodplains, those types of things, as well as community natural resources, cultural resources like Armstrong, Hastings, information on the railroad itself, because the section from St. Augustine to East Palaca was part of Henry Flagler's line that was abandoned, and they basically rerouted it straight up and down the coast.
Oh,
So
wow.
they took out the Y that went from St. Augustine to East Palatka back to Espanola, which is kind of near Bunnell,
Mm-hmm.
and history there. And then coming across, we developed the modified bridge trail
Mm-hmm.
on the north side of the Memorial Bridge. And then we have the Palatka Rail Trail connector that goes through downtown Palatka all the way to the Palatka Lake Butler Trail.
Mm-hmm.
So there's plenty of opportunities, I think. And then as you're traveling westward to you're going up into the Etnaya drainage, the Keystone Heights Lakes. At a certain point in that trail, when you exit Putnam County, you'd be entering into the Swanee River Valley.
Okay.
So there's a lot of opportunities that, some really neat interpretive information could be put up. I know in Keystone, a group had put up a series of interpretive signs,
Mm-hmm.
but it's more of a storyboarding thing. It didn't actually have to do with the trail itself, but it was a neat little thing. I just forgot what the subject was.
That's
Yeah.
okay. In asking that question, I got derailed on the trails thinking about meeting people. But what my original thought was is people parking down in St. Augustine. So they'll park their vehicle there and then they'll travel back and forth. But nonetheless, I think it would be cool to see. I think about the ravines and how there's like little signs
Mhm.
along the way, or if you go down to the courthouse, or even the murals, along the way. But some kind of, QR codes are a really
Yeah.
big thing, something that someone could scan and learn about the community along the way. If somebody had interest, again, with history being, I think, becoming more talked about.
Right.
I see a lot of interest in the community about history, and I do feel like a generation or two have passed that we've lost that history with. So, one of the focuses we have, along with highlighting the things in the community, is talking about the history. So, if someone wanted to connect with the Putnam Blueway and Trails and maybe want to provide historical points along the way, would they just reach out via the Facebook group or?
They could start there. They can always reach out to me. Um,
Okay.
I'd be glad to help out. And then always looking for volunteers. Anybody that wants to help develop an interpretive system, go after some grant funding. Another opportunity would be art along trails. There's communities that have put up, sculptures, those
Oh.
kinds of things along the trail system to recognize particular historic items. Uh, there's a lot of opportunities there. We just have to exercise where we want to take it.
Well, recently I had an interview with the Gathering Artist of Putnam, which will be coming out in the month of June, and they are trying to bring art. I don't know if you've traveled down St. John's and seen the art installations on the corners,
Mm-hmm.
but that might be a wonderful opportunity for you guys to work together. So let's be sure we get the two of you connected, because that would be really cool to see that. Um, I cannot. I don't know the name of the gentleman. I'm pretty sure it was a gentleman who was doing the wood carving sculptures out of the trees, and there was one again down St. John's, and he had like dolphins he had
Yeah.
carved out of his trees. How cool would it be to see like some
Right.
tree carving along the way? I think that is just so much encompasses that trail, whether it be tourism or just the natural resources or the
Mm-hmm.
history. It really is a uh, great gift to this community to just be able to walk out your door and within 15-20 minutes be on a bike trail and
Right.
span all the way to California. Apparently, it's
Absolutely.
something I did not know, and I look forward to in 5 years being able to see the development of that. Hopefully sooner for you, and I hope the Department of Transportation helps figure out a what was it, 4 miles, 2.5 miles, 2.5, same thing, right?
Yep. Close
2.5 miles, still a span of miles that needs to be rerouted there. When you talk about volunteers to do these things, they'll be able to connect with you. We'll leave the links below. Are your children and family also part of this? Do you drag them along for volunteerism?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I dig it. Often we talk about volunteerism, and it is the parents who inspire the children to do that. Was that something that your parents did?
Well, my parents instilled with my sister and myself is to be active in the community, find something to plant your civic duty, and whatever it be,
Hmm.
whether it be helping to build trails,
Hmm.
scouting, your church, those kind of things. Just be involved
That's a
and leave a legacy.
Right. That is a message that continues to show up
Yeah.
no matter who I talk to. So I hope that this video encourages you to get out there, explore Putnam County, hopefully connect with Kraig, volunteer. If you haven't figured out the theme, it seems to come up almost every time we talk about volunteering, and everybody has a way that they can do that, big or small. So well, I thank you for the education. Hopefully, we will get together again soon. We'll talk about the development of the trails. I'd like to get out there and get some footage of the expansiveness throughout Putnam County. So this won't be the first time that you get to talk to me.
Call anytime.
I love it. Well, thank you guys so much for tuning in. We hope to see you out there riding or walking or kayaking, whatever it might be. But don't forget, Putnam County has incredible resources, whether in people like Kraig or in our trails. So we'll see you on the next episode.